Hello, friends. It is May 2022, and I think this is going to be my last edition of Asking for a Friend on this channel that I'll be recording. And next month is our AGM, and there will be a new PD chair. I've been acting chair this year, and we'll see what they want to do with the channel. But I thought I'd use this opportunity to answer for you as a sneak peek some of the questions that I've been asked to talk about at the annual conference next month in Winnipeg. You can actually sign up if you're not able to make it to Winnipeg. You can sign up to the workshops and the plenaries for virtual participation. The plenaries, you get all of the plenaries for $50 as a member, and I can put the link in the blog post so that you can go and sign up if you and check them out and then sign up if you're interested. So the questions I've been asked to talk about in the Fellows Plenary are about my paid work. It's not something that I talk about unless I'm actually asked by Indigenous colleagues specifically to talk about it. Because what I do and have done for 15 years is I work as an evaluation capacity resource in the Atlantic region of First Nations and Inuit Health Branch in Indigenous Services Canada. So 15 years ago when I started, the region created this role out of the recognition that distinct from the national federal departmental evaluation function, the region had capacity needs that were not exclusively and directly tied to the reporting requirements and therefore the reporting capacity supports that were available from headquarters. And so I started in 2007, and by 2009, the region was clear that they wanted a strategic plan, a 5-year strategic plan for the regional function. And that should be mirroring and in alignment with the 5-year departmental evaluation plan, and yet distinct in recognition that we had 3 audiences, one of which was headquarters, one of which was regional staff, and one of which was First Nations and Inuit organizations and communities. Fast forward 10 years to 2019, the region recognized and approved that I, in my role as a regional advisor, am responsible only for 2 audiences. I'm not responsible for headquarters as an audience because that is a function that has its own FTEs and its own capacity support. And there is no other regional capacity support for regional staff and First Nation and Inuit organizations for their own evaluation capacity needs and inquiry, for self-governance and for regional management and decision-making. So to beef up that and to be ethically dividing the full-time equivalent that I am paid to provide, we actually have evolved so that half of my time is maximum half of my time is to strengthen regional ability to achieve and demonstrate results, and also to acknowledge that in mutual accountability that we need to be demonstrating results in a way that is relevant and responsive to First Nation and Inuit clients, and not only to the outcomes and the monitoring that is required from the department. So they are only one of our audiences, and we need to be capacitized to serve that, and we have others. And so this change was also necessary in 2019 because I had been for the 2 years previous in a process of working with an Indigenous mentor, a traditional knowledge keeper, to help me crack open my worldview and understand what it even meant when I was being asked to apply an Indigenous lens. The first time that I was in a meeting and a non-Indigenous colleague asked me if I would apply an Indigenous lens to my evaluation advice, I like to think that it was good sense when I said, actually, I don't have one. This is not an Indigenous lens, and neither do I have a document that describes what that is. Do you have one for me to follow? Is there consensus on what that means? And what I found was that it was a term that was gaining popularity. It was a concept that was espoused in principle, and there wasn't actually clarity from federal government or from my department or from my colleagues about what that actually meant. And I certainly was not prepared to figure out what that meant, because I had exhausted the knowledge bases that I was aware of and that I had access to. And none of those gave me good access at that time to any first voice Indigenous colleagues writing as Indigenous people about what Indigenous evaluation was and how I could be a support as an ally or as a self-responsive settler. So being responsible to self-responsible, I mean. So I actually was able to hire as a casual support Stephanie Francis, who is a local Indigenous evaluator, knower, traditional knowledge keeper, many things, many talents. And so she came and worked closely with me in 2016, 2017. She actually lived with me for a while. And so we spent, day and night together. We did everything, all of our work together. Sometimes she would observe how I work because she wanted to learn more about my thinking. And that helped her actually point out the difference between my thinking and her thinking. So she actually would watch me and have me narrate how I was analyzing something. And then she would introduce me to authors and literature and teachings to help break open my worldview. We presented on this in Vancouver in 2017, and we've continued to collaborate. But in the meanwhile, I was aware that I needed to be learning from more Indigenous authors, Indigenous evaluators, and I sort of got into the stream of learning from Nanwea Pahana and Larry Bremner and Nicole Bowman and some of those colleagues who are publishing. And I had more of an ability to even understand things that I thought I understood, like the word respect and the word reciprocity. I didn't, and relationality. Those were words that I thought I understood, but I had a limited, restricted, I'd say almost vestigial understanding of those words relative to what I'm starting to appreciate now. And so I was in 2019, in advance of the annual conference that was here in Halifax, we held a think tank that was facilitated by Larry Bremner and Nicole Bowman. And that think tank identified the need for a community of practice that became called the Atlantic Indigenous Evaluation Stewardship Circle. And that stewardship circle is still going, and there will be members of that stewardship circle who will be on the Fellows Plenary with me. And we have had 3 in-person events since the original one, I believe. And then we also had a series of webinars with Nikki and Larry facilitating in all last fiscal, in order to both answer questions and respond to demand, but also to consolidate a list of priorities that were identified both by Atlantic region staff and community-based stewardship circle participants about what government needs to learn and what Indigenous staff and emerging evaluators and commissioners, et cetera, want for infrastructure capacity supports, not just training, in order to support Indigenous-led evaluation in the region. And so the future of this is to continue to look for ways to build the independent and first voice led networks, tools, and connections to Indigenous research networks that are also emerging right now, and to the not only the Atlantic region, but national and international momentum that's happening. And this includes the Global Eval Indigenous Network. And it also includes now a new relationship with a Black evaluation ecosystem that is emerging and is being led at this time by an Afrocentric Learning Institute in Halifax and the Network for the Advancement of Black Communities in Toronto. So there is now synergy and mutual support between Indigenous evaluation infrastructure here in the Atlantic region and local and national made in Africa and Afrocentric decolonizing and anti-racism and community grassroots, culturally based approaches to knowledge and inquiry and community planning and all the things, arts-based engagement, all the things that I do not have skills. I'm asked to do lands-based, I'm asked to do arts-based, and it's not my skill set. But what is becoming my skill set is identifying where what I have and what I know is limited, and how access to friends and colleagues and sources of resourcing can still reduce barriers and increase opportunities responsive to the need for ways of working and ways of developing communities of practice that are first voice led and that are independent from organizations that are in the process of decolonizing ourselves. So when I say that, I mean federal government, Canadian Evaluation Society. We're in the process of taking responsibility for dismantling systems of racism and colonization and white exceptionalism and all kinds of things that until we crack them open and we're able to see them by understanding them in contrast to something else, then we make the mistake of thinking that we're normal and that we're neutral and that we don't actually, we make the mistake of seeing anything. If we even are able to see it, we see it from a point of reference that is centered, and we normalize our centeredness, as opposed to realizing that every perspective is centered in its own reality and needs to be honored in that way, not as divergent, but as centered to itself. So it's fun. It's an exciting journey that I believe is at a tipping point now because of national commitments and the combination of pivot to virtual and the movements and funding and policies that are now contributing to honoring the importance, the necessity of Indigenous voice in the global challenges that we have: carbon, biodiversity, just transition, environmental justice. That these are not luxuries. These are not nice to do. This is actually central to peace, prosperity, and a life worth living for all in the future. There is nobody who is now thinking that they are exempt from climate change, no matter where you're positioned. And increasingly, we are recognizing that Indigenous rights of nature, and anti-racism and decolonization are fundamental to addressing the root thinking and the root ways of governing and dealing that have perpetuated displacement and inequity and competition instead of mutualism. So you've heard me talk about those things before, but I don't think I've ever related it to what I do for money. And in my paid hours. And that's because, again, I don't talk about what I do unless I'm instructed. I don't talk about it out. I don't spill the tea. I don't talk about it out of the house unless I'm actually asked to by Indigenous colleagues. And in this case, I have been asked to talk about it at a national conference. So I thought I'll share it with you here first, some of the perspectives and some of the trajectory. I hope it was of interest.